Blessings, Yah Royals. Praises to the Most High Yah. Honor and glory to His holy name. And honor unto the Holy Spirit, which is wisdom. Family, want to come back on with another video to share this once again. I shared it probably almost a year now ago. And this is about the 400-year cycle of America. This man happened to be a Caucasian man, sounds to be a Caucasian man, who did this video. I wanted to share probably two segments, two parts of it, which he speaks of the 400-year cycle of the man who went on Sid Roth show, which they go on testify about the 400-year cycle. But then I'll move to another video that show of that. He doesn't really show the video. And also, I want to share, if you haven't seen or heard about time was change and how time was changed, I have that. I want to say stumble across it yesterday. I was just looking for some other information, but I know all this is of, the Most High's doing. From what, I'm gathering, that something that I needed to bring forth to you all. So let's get started. But before we do, just want to reiterate that the 400-year cycle, we have, looked at it as descendants of slaves and as Israelites being, about the 400-year prophecy. But there are ones what happen to be those of what have enslaved us, their, ancestors, their forefathers. They feel like they were given this, far as a blessing unto them. I don't know if you been watching Big Judah, but a lot of books he's bringing out, telling a lot of different truth and tied in with the Bible, and also along with the Book of Mormon. But again, when they, actually was given the lead way to come to, which this will be called the fourth part, they were given that by the Almighty. They believe that. And that shows up in the lineup of Christopher Columbus, that he felt, and it is mentioned that a spirit was put on him to come over to this part. And the ones that were here, which were, I believe, of the 10 lost tribe, or of, at least some of the tribes, they knew that once these people came, that meaning that they were going to be dealt with, they were going to be judged by the Most High in their doing. So this is way before, of course, the slave ships brought the ones from the continent. These were the ones of there around and along the time of 1492. So let's take a listen to it. And before I go any further, I want to share about Malachi 3:16, how, the Old Testament and the New Testament, how it's a part that me just studying and just seeking the Most High about it, how much, way off of a distance that it was brought to the forefront. And I want to say anywhere from 400 to 600 years after, right? So just put in mind that the Romans, the ones who invaded the land, conquered it, and took our writings back to Rome, they had access to see exactly how all was going to be played out. And when I say books, see, we call it like the Bible because it's compiled of the books, but this was a name that was given by them, Bible, right? Compile of books. But this in Malachi 3 says, then they that fear the Lord spake often one to another, and the Lord hearkened and heard it. And a book of remembrance was written before him for them that feared the Almighty, and that thought upon his name. And they shall be mine, saith the Almighty of hosts, in that day when I make up my jewels, and I will spare them, as a man spareth his own son that serveth him. Then shall ye return and discern between the righteous and the wicked, between him that serveth God and him that serveth him not. So in this, just to add this in, we have, an account for the Old Testament, which we know that there were books taken out. And in Ezra, Second Ezra is mentioned that it's actually 204 books. So the 66 books that the most Bibles have today, it is not even adding the other 14 or 15 books from the Apocrypha, it doesn't even equate to 204 books. So that indicates that there are more books missing. So what I'm seeing and understanding and believing at this point is that the New Testament was brought into a place, not saying they weren't our true books, but it was, so much of they have infiltrated, they've added, they have tampered with. And I know you may not want to hear this or may not agree, but we must, understand that when this being written out, far as in the the New Testament, it's lined up with the victors so much of the ones like the Romans and the Greeks and ones that made it, that conquered the land. And if I'm permitted today to go over this, the lineup of how many people who wanted access to our blessings, the land, even if they had to fake it and make it out of another land and call it that, whatever degree, they saw that was prime property. They saw it was a blessing to be attached and affiliated with that land and the blessings that came with it. So we're going to listen to this video here just to hear him out in two segments. One, you're going to see where he is saying that according to this website, they're calculating by 2025 that America will lose close to, I want to say 2 million people, and he'll show that. But there are other countries, so, seemingly they are still having, they've lost too, but it's according to this website, and he'll go over that. Then I'll close it from that and then show you the video that he's speaking of, this man named Shane, that actually on the Sid Roth show. Here we go.
I'd like, kind of like we pledge our allegiance to the Most High. We want.
So I wanted to start it back at the beginning.
Basically, in the 1620 was the Mayflower Compacts. I'm sure you've all heard of it, where it was like a declaration, an honor to God, like, kind of like we pledge our allegiance to the Most High. We want to live pure and godly, lives. It was signed November 21st, 1620 by the Pilgrims in Massachusetts. The Declaration to the Most High. There's a guy named Shane Warren who was on Supernatural, Sid Roth, and I'm pretty sure, I'm about 100% sure that this is a Freemason agent, and this guy is a Freemason agent, and Perry Stone is a Freemason, and everybody that's on television is controlled. So you can see he's holding up what seems to be an Illuminati or Freemason hand sign, But what's so important about this, here's a guy named Lindsey Williams. Now, this is very important. This is why we need to listen and see what these so-called Christians are promoting. Now, here's a guy named Lindsey Williams. He's been on Alex Jones and the Prophecy Club, and, everything that he's predicted never happens. He's a total fraud. But one statement that he made, very important, most important statement he ever made, he said that the power elite believe it's ungentlemanlike to not warn the public before they produce a big disaster or big nightmare. And he's absolutely right. And one of the main ways they reveal their plans is in TV shows and, so-called science fiction movies and all this. They actually reveal what they're going to do. So back to Shane Warren, who's apparently a Freemason agent. They're probably all frauds. Russian Vids, I think Russian Vids was absolutely right when he said everything you see on television is controlled. They're all controlled. They're not going to tell you real revelation and real knowledge on television. The power elite believe it's ungentlemanlike to not warn the public before they do some big disaster. So pay attention to what they're saying. Okay, so Shane Warren talks about how he saw what seemed to be a big, horrific hurricane in the middle of the United States. It was devastating. And he saw where the dollar had died. You know, it's kind of like this big hurricane was blowing dollar bills and the headline news, the dollar is dead. And there was pandemonium everywhere. Well, that's most likely going to happen. They are revealing real truth to you. And what's so important about his message is he talks about the 400-year cycle of America, 1620 to 2020, the 400-year cycle. This is when, basically, what's going to happen is after 2020 is when the grace period ends. God's grace over America is finished. He's done. That's why when 2021 rolls around, like 2021 to 2028 should be the real destruction of America. You know, somewhere in there, people are going to starve to death. People are going to be forced to get a, chip in their hand. America's going to be split in half. Economic collapse, followed by Russia and China and all of its allies attacking America. I'm sure that Michelle Obama will probably be president somewhere in there. If you go to Google, just type in American population 2025, you'll see this strange website. There's been people that have investigated this website, and they cannot prove who the real owner is. It's like hidden knowledge or something. They believe it could be a CIA website. What's so disturbing about the website, it shows the population, the estimated populations of the world in the year 2025. And look at this, the United States, apparently 200 million people dead or something. So if this is actually true, then that means the big nightmare of America, the judgment, should happen between the year 2021 and 2025 or 2024. Something else that's very interesting, this Shane Warren guy, he saw in supposedly a vision or dream where America, this big earthquake that split America in half, he saw where huge cities and towns were completely leveled. America, this big earthquake in the Midwest, totally devastated America. It should happen.
All right, so family, coming back with the next part to it. So what he was saying, he showed the actual population. You could plug that in, type all that in and look it up. I want to say the website is called deagle.com, if I'm not mistaken. I know he said a lot of other things, even including about Michelle Obama. That's what he said. I'm not saying I'm condoning or I'm down with that. We don't know how this is all going to play out. One thing we can do is trust in the Most High. But I just want to bring this to your attention because it's very interesting how they talking about the 400-year cycle, and we have been talking about the 400-year prophecy, and that they did gain, they feel like they were given the rights to America and that they only had a period of time, which I truly believe that the Most High gave us unto them for a period of time, and they know that their time is up, right? Or getting close to it. Also, when I shared in another video about after the inauguration of Obama, that night of the inauguration, that a lot top officials like Paul Ryan and a lot of them went to this actual restaurant, and they made basically a vow to block any and everything that would come from the White House. They weren't going to support Obama at all because, for one, they saw it, as a commentary said shortly after, moving beyond that that restaurant when all of them were there. He said that they, felt like, could this be the Old Testament judgment? And the Old Testament judgment is coming upon, America and wherever those slave ships went, because they have not been judged yet. They have the forefathers of theirs and them themselves have not been judged yet. So when they saw, when they saw, a so-called black man got into the sea, oh my goodness, could this be that this is the time now that everything is going to flip and flip back to them? So it's very interesting. So let's hear Shane out speaking to Sid Roth about this, and you can hear him.
And there's what you call a 400-year cycle. There are numerous cycles, and the Word of God said, you have 400, 490 years and 70-year cycles, things of that nature. Right. But specifically is when God spoke to Abraham and told Abraham before the children of Israel went into bondage that they would be there for 400 years in Egypt. And he said they would be there, and then he said, because the iniquity of the Amorites has not yet come to the full. In other words, it would take 400 years for the iniquity to build up to the place that provoked God's judgment.
A lot of people don't understand this. It's almost like God has much more mercy than any human you've ever met. And but because he has so much mercy, you think you can get away with sin? Well, what is going on is like a big barrel, and the sins are being poured into it. And there comes a tipping point. That's what you're talking about.
We're at the tipping point. In fact, it could be that America has went beyond the tipping point at this phase. I hope not, and I pray not. But still, that 400 years, there is some sort of prophetic cycle there. Most people focus on America only being 230-some odd years old, but the truth of the matter is the first compact in America was signed in 1620. So the 400-year cycle for America is going to come at the year 2020. Every single major student of church growth, church history is telling you that in America we're on a slippery slope, an incredible drastic decline within the church and
so what happens in a 400-year cycle to a country?
The judgment of God is poured out.
Okay, what is the major reason that the judgment of God is poured out on a nation historically at that 400-year cycle?
Well, one of the primary sins that is always evident at that 400 years is sexual immorality. If you study every single major nation throughout the history of the world, they all reach drastic points of drastic decline and even destruction whenever the immorality had come to the full. And it manifested itself in every single form of perversion that you can imagine. And that is happening right now in America.
Well, the classic example I think of from the Bible is Sodom and Gomorrah.
Absolutely, Sodom and Gomorrah. And America, in many ways, in fact, in my opinion, has went way beyond Sodom and Gomorrah.
Now tell me about what God has shown you about the four winds.
Yeah. The book of Revelation says there's four angels that stand on the four corners of the earth. These angels have control of four winds. These are not natural winds. These are spiritual winds, but they manifest themselves in natural ways. Throughout world history, you study history, you'll find out there are four winds that always have shaped nations, controlled the course of world history. One is the wind of war. Another one is the wind of economy. Another one is the wind of religion. And the wind of politics. And these four winds are blowing. And God began to show me these four winds are blowing all over the world at the same time, and they're escalating, Sid, and they're creating for us the perfect storm. And the reason I say the perfect storm is because God prophesied this storm was going to come to pass. So we know this is going to happen. The scripture is clear that it's going to happen. Unfortunately, this is not a popular message right now in America.
Is this happening right now?
Absolutely. Look at the wars and the rumors of wars that are taking place all over the globe. The Middle East, the wind of war is blowing. The wind of war, terrorism, has encompassed the entire globe. Every nation has been affected by it, the wind of war. What about the wind of economics? Somebody who would have to be totally ignorant to world events would say the wind of economics isn't blowing. It's not only blowing, it is storming around the world. Entire nations' economies are collapsing. Entire governments on the world are on the verge of bankruptcy. Just yesterday I read a report that 46 of our states in the Union had a $160 billion shortfall last year in their budgets. America is on the brink of bankruptcy, and they're sharing with us a bunch of lies, and it's not true. We're in trouble.
Okay, God showed you 7 attacks from the scriptures and previous nations. Pick 2 of them.
Oh, one of the mighty attacks upon nations. In the book of Revelation, there's a mention of a 7-headed dragon. This 7-headed dragon, these 7 heads represent 7 empires of world history. We can mark that.
Okay, family, coming back with the next segment. Now, keep in mind from the previous video with Sid Roth, and also his name is Shane Warren. You can look this video up. It's on the web. And even the one with Sid Roth, you can look it up to see it in fullness. Now, what's happening with that? He said something very interesting, because let's go to, let's see here. It's going to let me get here. One moment. Let's go to the book of Genesis and read 15. So this, came to mind. So Genesis 15, this is where Father is speaking to Abraham, right? And it says here, and he said unto Abram, know of a surety that thy seed shall be a stranger in a land that is not theirs, and shall serve them, and they shall afflict them 400 years. So whenever I got to 400 years, many times, even, after this, understanding of awakening and whatnot, I'm like, did they tamper with the 400 years? But let's move forward. And it says, and also that nation whom they shall serve will I judge. Okay. And afterward shall they come out with great substance. So it tells us here that the nation that our forefathers have served, like when they applying this to Egypt, or even if they're applying it to America, wherever nation we serve, he will judge while we're there. And then afterward, we'll come up with great abundance. So you look throughout, the different, books of the Bible, scriptures and whatnot, when they were in captivity, they always saw judgment before they got let out of the place, right? Just if you go back and just look, I don't know of any time that Father brought them out and then he judged that land where they were. It's like he allowed them to see. So it's like it's like the same way. It's like he never changed. Same yesterday, today, and forevermore. Then it says here, and thou shalt go to thy fathers in peace. Thou shalt be buried in a good old age. So I thought it was kind of odd to have that part in this, but anyone say, well, Father just changed the course, and he now telling Abraham that, thou shalt go to thy father in peace after this happened, right? Okay. So where was Abraham around the time when our forefathers went to Egypt? Where was Abraham? Was he not dead already? But anyway, let's move forward. But in the fourth generation, they shall come hither again, for the iniquity of the Amorites is not yet full. But in the fourth generation, they shall come hither again. Okay. For the iniquity of the Amorites is not yet full. So when mentioned about the Amorites, and what he was saying is that the sin of the Amorites did not build up yet, got to a place where Father, it's like, was going to do anything to the Amorites. But it says, but in the fourth generation, they shall come hither again, for the iniquity of the Amorites is not filled. So what if this really were saying about us being in America, that, even I said, why would the Most High, allow us to be delivered in the sense of free from the ones who enslaved us, not being on the land anymore, but allowing us to be on, other land or our own, or still struggling. And then, but he, touched Abraham Lincoln and also George Washington. And I seen this in a video, History Network on TV, that they had visitations. They called them aliens, but why would the aliens have anything to do with us being free? Because it said the Spirit got on Abraham Lincoln for him to write out the Emancipation Proclamation. Even there, one that a spiritualist came to him and told that she was advised, that she felt very compelled by, the Holy Spirit was guiding her to tell Abraham Lincoln that you must do this. So if those, what they call aliens, were really, say, aliens, they weren't angels, why would the aliens have any dealings with wanting the slaves free to whatever degree? So even with this being said, Father, allow us to still be in our mode along the way up until now is 2020. But the Amorites, which could be America, ones, surrounding the whole world, their sin did not reach up yet to where it needed to be. So that stuck out for a moment. I'm not saying exactly like this family, but we must admit that I know what I saw, and it's on a historical channel, a history channel. You can go look it up. It's Abraham. It's dealing with Abraham, but it's speak of aliens. And I was led over to that channel the way it happened. And I saw within that history, documentary in that 1 hour, it was like 4 things that tie back to the Israelites. And I have it further down my page. You could check it out, right? So I thought that was very interesting. So let's go back to this where I want to take you at now. So for those who ever wondered about the time, what happened? Because actually March the 25th really was the first start of a new year. That will line things up with us being as Israelites, right? So around that time, right? March, like going into April, but so it used to be where the first of the year was in March. So let's check this out. So when 11 days were erased from time, and this is in the British Empire, and it says this is in a nutshell. It says in 1752, Britain and all its colonies adopted the Gregorian calendar, which was already widely used across most of Western Europe. To get its date in alignment with neighboring countries, Britain had to remove 11 days, September the 3rd through the 13th, from both its calendar and history. These are now ghost days that forever haunt historians and genealogists as they deal with the confusion of old and new dates. Okay, it says for 11 days in September 1752, no one was born and no one died in the British Isles or in any of the English colonies. So they lost all that history in those 11 days. It says, in fact, nothing happened at all. This wasn't due to a cosmic wrinkle in time or some other such phenomenon, but because a calendar was rearranged. Yes, in 1752, the days of September the 3rd through the 13th were omitted from the British history when the country switched from the Julian to the Gregorian calendar. Those days simply don't exist. As we might imagine, the adoption of the new calendar caused a bit of disorder, and not all were happy about making the switch. According to some accounts, although these tales might be exaggerated, villagers even rioted in the streets with complaints that the government was stealing days of their lives. Not only did the citizens have to give up 11 days in 1752, the year 1751 was also about 3 months short. This was because in preparation for taking the Gregorian calendar, England also had to change its new years from March the 25th to January 1st. Wow. So December the 31, 1751 was followed by January the 1st, 1752, instead of remaining 1751 until March the 25th as usual. Despite all the complaints and all the hassles of getting rid of their old calendar, the Parliament felt it had no choice but to make the change, as the British were quite literally falling behind in time from the neighboring countries. Britain lag in time was due to the fact that most of the Western Europe had accepted the Gregorian calendar 170 years earlier. Wow. So now with this Pope Gregory declared that all Catholics countries should use this new calendar. The problem with the Julian version was that it calculated a year as being 365 days and 6 hours long. when it actually is closer to 365 days, 5 hours, and 49 minutes. While that 11 minutes difference might not seem like a big deal, over time it really started throwing things off. Most importantly, at least to the Pope, Easter had drifted 10 days too far away from the spring equinox, an error that was unacceptable to the Catholic Church. So in 1582, the Pope eliminated 10 days from the year, decreed that all should use the Gregorian calendar. The English of 1582, however, felt they were too powerful to yield the wishes of the Pope, and on top of that, they weren't on the best terms with the Catholics, considering they had just broken off from them around 50 years prior when they formed the Church of England. It took another 170 years before they finally succumbed to the Gregorian calendar after they were thoroughly fed up with using two calendars, double dating documents, and having two New Year's days. Wow. So you imagine that. Still getting their dates in line with the rest of the Western Europe didn't totally eliminate the confusion. Even today, historians and genealogists have to pay careful attention to what system was used when a document was recorded, and double dating still persists when it's unclear whether a date was under the old style or new style. Some people at the time even took the liberty of converting documents dates to the new style. For example, George Washington was technically born on February 11, 1731, but after the calendar change, he amended his birthday to February the 22nd, 1732. This also had the side benefit of making him seem a year younger than he really was, at least on paper. Nowadays, the only chance we have to manipulate days and time is on a leap year when we add a day into February. Of course, leap years only happen every 4 years, assuming the numbers of years is divisible by 4 and not divisible by 100, unless it can also be evenly divided by 400. The bottom line, time is confusing and always relative. Wow. So, family, this right here, for those who have heard this and never, looked this up, I was looking for something else, just, online, and this actually was in an area, and I clicked, and I was like, wow, I've heard of this, but I never read it. So just wanted to share that with you all as well, okay? Very interesting. Very interesting. Yes. So that will tell you about the 11, days. It will tell you about the time, which that leads me to this scripture here. Thank you, Father.